moonshine. Hello, moonshine. This is my very first AA meeting tonight. Well, they pulled my tractor over. Said I had too much on my namesake that night.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the podcast. Let's go ahead and address this right now while we're talking about it. And those of you who tuned in to the first podcast, originally we were going to call this Incidents and Accidents. Turns out that name's being used by at least 2 other podcasts, so that was kind of a no-go. We've decided to rebrand. From now on, we're going to call it the Juke Joint Heroes Podcast, a podcast focusing on the weekend warriors, all the folks that play the small restaurants, venues, that sort of thing. What legitimately in this state started out as juke joints.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The ones that don't have accountants.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Sometimes don't have licenses even. Did you ever hear of Gibbs Place in Birmingham?
Yes.
I actually got to play that, which was the oldest surviving juke joint. It had been there since 1954. And I'm pretty sure he didn't have any license or anything like that. Matter of fact, I think it turned into a big lawsuit, but that was a fantastic place. But yeah, that's what I've always thought of is, as sophisticated as all these clubs are, they're still pretty much just juke joints.
Sure. A
place for people to have a good time, sometimes a good time, sometimes a bad good time.
Yes.
We see it all, and that's what this podcast is about, is all those stories of the good times and bad times we've seen.
Believable or not. I promise to never lie. I might lean into it 5% just for dynamic effect on the show, but everything you hear is pretty much how it shook out.
And as much as possible, we'll not include names to protect the innocent or not so in it.
Yes.
We don't want to give anything away. We've been doing this for a long time.
And we are not experts on statute of limitations.
Exactly. And not only that, some of the people who they were then are not that's not who they are now.
Amen.
So we want to...
I'd like to think I fall into that category myself.
Yeah, me too. I guess that's debatable somewhat.
I'm still Peter Pan of sorts, but I have refined it a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. I've read somebody told me to just grow up. Well, now I can't.
Sure.
So you just got back from vacation, man. How was vacation?
It was nice. It was uneventful. We go to Mexico Beach because there's nothing there. Mexico Beach, Florida.
Yes.
If you're into airbrush t-shirts, carpet golf, go-kart racing, being shot up in the sky on a giant rubber band, it is not the place for you. Yes, it's just, they have some sort of statute in the city where you can't build a building more than 3 or 4 stories high, so it keeps all the high rises and stuff like that out. It's just low key. It's my speed.
Weirdly enough, when I was a little kid, my grandfather took us to Mexico Beach.
Sure.
He borrowed an RV from, I think his brother, my great uncle. And we all loaded up in it and drove down, and we stayed in this little RV park. And I was very, very young, so the only thing that I remember about the whole trip, in order to take a shower, because the RV one was not to be used, they had a little shower place.
What year would have this been?
This would have been, I was born in 73, 77, 78,
Gotcha.
Pre-80s.
I was 2.
Yes. So the little shower place that they had was really just an outdoor building that they put some plumbing in, some shower heads, and you stood on shipping pallets. So you went in there in your flip-flops, you got undressed, there were little stalls, and you had shipping pallets.
That small, you were a threat to step between the...
Here's what's worse. Turn on the water, and all of a sudden, all these tiny little frogs start hopping out from in between the slats. And being a little kid, I freaked out. And that is...
I'm 46, and I'm probably freaked out.
That's literally...
At least for a minute.
Literally the only thing I remember. There's just like hundreds of frogs jumping up from all of those shit.
Yeah, if you're not ready, it doesn't matter whether you're comfortable with it or not.
Yeah.
I've got a video from my carport where my wife, who will pick up almost any snake, found a rat snake, but she wasn't expecting rats. Snakes.
Oh.
Yeah, she almost fell.
I don't care what kind of snake it is, it's a snake.
Yeah, she's not afraid of them unless they're venomous. And this one was not venomous, but she didn't expect it to be there. So yeah, I can imagine as a 2, 3, 4-year-old child.
Yeah, frogs. One frog is really cute and fun to play with. 100 frogs
Yes.
is a freak out. Totally. But that's the only thing I remember
I
about
bet that
Mexico.
RV park is still there. I bet it's the one right in front of El Governor.
Probably.
Yeah, it's like the only hotel there.
I'm sure that place hasn't changed a whole lot. You know, it's weird how some places in Florida year to year you can't recognize.
Sure.
Other places just never change.
It's a little. Hurricane Michael came through there and leveled it. If that had not taken place, absolutely, that would be the case.
Wow.
Because there was a lot of people that, probably had a couple years in on a vacation rental property piece that they bought. It got whacked, and then they had to sell it.
My grandfather tells a story about years ago. He had 3 brothers. And so one was in the Army, one was in the Air Force, one was in the Navy, and one was in the Marines. And they were all served in Vietnam and Korea. Or at least my grandfather served in Korea. I don't know if the other 3 did. But once they all got out of the military, the youngest brother, George, moved to Panama City and called my grandfather and his brothers and said, "Hey, man, there's some beachfront property down here. They're basically just selling it for, not much, an acre. Let's go in together and buy it and put a condo down here for families to vacation on." So they all went down and looked at it and decided it was too much money, it was too swampy, it's going to be a lot of hassle. So they passed. And this was probably late 60s, early 70s. That's now part of the Miracle Strip.
Sure.
So had they bought that property, we would be
Comfortable.
Yes, that would probably be. I'd be the heir to a fortune instead of 100 heir. Be a millionaire. Yeah.
100 there. So what's going on in the gig world?
Man, okay. So I have a story and cautionary tale.
I like it.
Well, as you know, we've discussed this in the past. I'm working on trying to lose weight. So I've been doing the 1 meal a day thing, fasting. I'm on week 5 now. I've lost about 32 pounds. Feel better than I had in years.
So. Man. I shout it from the rooftop.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer. And you know what's crazy is to deviate from the story a moment. What's crazy to me is, I've lost the weight, but the inflammation in my ankle healed up. My ankle's hurt for 10 years straight.
Sure.
It has not hurt in 4 weeks.
Yes.
The neuropathy in my feet's gone away. My psoriasis died down. All these problems that I thought I was going to have to live with for the rest of my life are reversing themselves.
There's a ditch on both sides of the road, and too much nutrient will cause your body to respond in a way that is oftentimes not desirable.
Well, I'm absolutely convinced that I was probably already pre-diabetic.
Sure.
Or not pre-diabetic, but actually in type 2 diabetes, because I had heard a doctor give a lecture, and he was talking about how the test for diabetes is inaccurate. It was developed in the 70s. It hasn't been changed since. And they test your fasting sugar rate.
Fasting glucose levels.
Yes. And if they're low, then okay, you don't have diabetes. But this doctor's point was diabetics oftentimes can have very low glucose level in their fasting rate and eat one thing and their insulin shoots through the roof. And every one of the symptoms that he talks about of having high insulin, I had.
Sure.
So I believe that I was that was part of the reason why I wanted to do the 1 meal a day, was to try and break that cycle and get my body back sensitive to insulin.
Yeah.
All right, so anyway, back to the story. This past weekend, we played in Piedmont, Alabama, a venue called The Place. Fantastic place, nice folks that own it. I had a great time. But it is a building that basically caved in, so there's just the shell, and they turned it into this really cool outdoor venue.
Okay.
The stage is really high up off the ground, and concrete is solid. From the riser, I'm 10 feet off the ground. And up there, there's no air movement whatsoever.
Oh, sure.
And I had a fan on me, and it didn't make any difference. I was running off the stage every 2 or 3 songs. They had us an ice bucket with ice water in it. And I would plunge a towel into that and then wring it out and put it around my neck. And 3 songs later, I have to do it again. What hurt me was
5 of that 32 pounds might have been that night.
It could have been. Well, here's where I went wrong. This is the cautionary part of the tale. In my fasting routine, my one meal a day, I've been eating somewhere between 5 and 7 p.m.
Sure.
Just dinner. That's more convenient. I get to eat at home with the family.
I call it the least socially awkward.
Right, exactly. So, but got to the venue at that time, loaded in. It was so hot, I was so miserable, couldn't eat.
Right.
So I went into that gig already 26 hours without any food whatsoever. And I'm sure that probably was contributory, but got all the way through the gig, made it through into the gig. I couldn't stand up without my head spinning. I thought I was going to pass out. I'd pick stuff up, and I literally had no energy at all.
Right.
I think I was close to heat stroke.
Right.
And to their credit, and a big, huge thank you to Charlie Freeman, Brian Works, Skip Hatmaker, and Phil Gladden. They packed and loaded my gear. They put me in my van, loaded my gear for me, and then Brian Works drove me home.
Wow.
And it was halfway home with the air conditioner blowing full blast before I was able to sit up and talk and be coherent again. It was really, really bad.
For me, I also did the 1 meal a day thing, but I do not do it on gig days for that purpose right there.
Well, what I've decided to do from now on when I have that, it's like I did today. Instead of eating dinner, I ate lunch.
Sure.
And of course, that means tomorrow I'll actually be closer to 30 hours before I finally eat again. But that's fine.
Yeah.
I found out through doing this, going 36 to 48 hours, 48 hours starts getting a little rough. But
Sure.
36 hours is really not any big deal.
I had a heart condition develop, which absolutely baffled me. I have some ideas of what caused it, but we won't go into that. But left side chest pain, left arm pain. Went to the doctor. They take a bunch of money from you, put you on a treadmill, make you run, all that stuff, and put me on a calcium channel blocker because they said my heart muscle was contracting too hard. In the first week on the calcium channel blocker, I'm up 4 pounds. I have no energy. I can't ride my mountain bike. I can't go to the gym. I do 1 set and turn around and leave because I feel like trash. So about 2 weeks into this, I'm up about 6 pounds. I'm like, we're not going in the right direction.
No.
This is wrong. And so I just decided to start doing the 1 meal a day thing. I stopped taking the calcium channel blocker, and I go. My doctor, who is in Oxford, I drive past about 200 doctors to go see this guy because his primary focus is your wellness, not giving you medicine.
Oh, that's great.
And he was looking at my stuff. He mentioned he could see my pulse and my brachial pain and all this stuff, and he was just like, your weight's down, you look good, your numbers are perfect. Are you still taking your calcium channel blocker? I was like, no, sir. He stopped for a second, and I told him the whole deal. And I told him I was intermittent fasting. He said, Mr. Player, if human beings had to have 3 meals a day, we would not exist right now.
He's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then he said, so you know what you have to do. And I said, yes, sir. Fist bumped me, got up and left the room. He said, see you in 12 months, not 6 months. He told me if you do this, once a year is fine.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So.
I'm a believer. I'm telling you. And my doctor, and bless her heart, she's a sweet lady. She really cares. One of the reasons why I go to her is because I feel like she actually cares. She gives a shit.
Right.
I've been to too many doctors who did not give a shit. Just write you a prescription and get out of my office. She actually cares, or at least I feel like she does. But she's also a doctor who's been a doctor for a long time.
Right.
I'm sure she's set in her ways. She
might be dealing with some old information.
Well, right. She knows one thing, one way. And she was doing the same thing that doctor I listened to the lecture on was talking about. They would check my fasting sugar rate, and shocked to find out that I wasn't diabetic. Well, I was.
Sure. If there's nothing in your body, then your pancreas has no reason to do anything.
Right.
In my mind, that's like not that good a time to check your blood sugar.
Oh, yeah. Well,
I'm not a medical professional. Neither is he.
No, not at all. Yes, please
None
do
of
not
this
take
medical advice.
Do not take any medical advice from us.
Purposes only.
Yes,
Proceed.
exactly. But I'll tell you, if you're brave enough to try it, if you think you can do without, just do it for a month and see if you don't feel better.
I will say this. I do know for a fact, I heard this from a doctor.
Talk to your doctor first before you do it.
Yes. That if you're on metformin, you're not supposed to fast. That's
I don't even know what that is.
It's a diabetes medicine. I think it blocks neoglucogenesis, and neoglucogenesis is where your liver actually makes glucose. It's part of the fasting process that keeps you alive.
Is that a type 1 diabetes thing? Because that doctor brought up something about type 1 diabetes and not being able to fast too. That may be a similar thing.
Possibly. But I do remember them saying that if you're on metformin and you fast, you can die from it.
Well,
so
I know
check with your medical professional.
Yes. I know very little about diabetes, and I hope I know all I ever need to know at this point.
Well, basically, if you behave kind of like you already have diabetes, you should never develop type 2.
Sure. Well, like I said, I think I already have.
Sure.
But I'm hoping to roll that back because you can actually
you can
retrain your body to be sensitive to insulin, which is what all this is about.
We live in the most fascinating thing in all of creation.
Yeah, it's crazy. I did it. So here, what started all this was blood pressure. My blood pressure has been high for decades, and I mean seriously high. Like they put me in the hospital. I was 210 over 130.
That's high, bro. That's like squirt out your veins.
Yeah, they put me in ICU. I was the only person in ICU who could get up on my own, go to the bathroom by myself. All the nurses loved me because they didn't have to wait on me hand and foot. Right. But they put me in ICU because that was the only place to put me. But
that's a serious number.
They did 5 different tests on my heart. And finally, the 5th day, the cardiologist came in the room and said, "Look, man, there's nothing wrong with your heart." He said, "You've got some thickening of the walls where you've had high blood pressure for God knows how long."
Yes.
He said, "But you're fine. There's no
Is that called myocarditis?
Yeah, maybe I don't. But he said it wasn't anything. It wasn't to the level to be concerned about."
Sure.
He's like, "Get the blood pressure down, or it will."
So you had an enlarged heart.
Yeah.
Basically, what that is your heart is a muscle.
Yeah.
And when it's having to work that hard, it grows.
Yeah. Like a bicep. Yeah, exactly. So, but everything they tested me for, they have not been able to find a reason why my blood pressure is that high. Well, you know what makes your blood pressure high? Too much damn insulin.
Huh.
And they never put those two things together. They keep treating me for blood pressure while never talking to me about the diabetes because according to that test,
Sure.
there's no reason to. But when I started by fasting, just by virtue of fasting, your insulin goes down.
Sure.
It started fixing. I can't wait until my next doctor's appointment and they check my blood pressure because I want to see what it's doing to my blood pressure.
Sure.
You know,
Oh,
I could go by Walmart and check it, but I don't know how much I trust those.
32 pounds less human being is going to result in a significant drop in your blood pressure. I bet all your numbers are going to be good. It helps with fatty liver.
Yeah.
So any of that
That's what I'm
stuff,
hoping for too.
it'll absolutely clean up fatty liver, man. It's really, I believe it was the way we were designed. Because if you go back to your hunter-gatherer stuff, they killed an animal, there was no fridge.
Yeah.
They freaking ate it all right then.
And then they went 3 to 5 days without
they found
anything.
something else. Right. And if they found berries or whatever, they wiped that shit out and then moved on to the next episode. And it wasn't a regular eating schedule. It was when you could, as much as you could.
Sure. Now, for those of you that are watching or listening and wondering what the hell this has to do with musicianship or playing in bands.
The long game.
Exactly. I'm 49 years old. This shit's not getting any easier. Except, I noticed last weekend, climbing up on the riser, I went up a lot faster and got to the top, a lot less winded and easier, and significantly enough that I've stopped and realized, holy shit, that was easier than it was 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that makes all the difference in the world because there were nights when at the end of the night, it was all I could do to load my gear in the car and go home. I'd be just wasted on energy. Mm-hmm. And now, even eating only one meal a day, when I get done with a gig, hell, I go home and sit and watch TV for a little while.
Sure.
I've got plenty of energy.
It's amazing what it does.
And it's level energy. It's not up and down. That's...
Yeah, eating a bunch of food or some food 3 times a day, I would always get a spike of energy and then a crash, and a spike and a crash, and a spike and a crash. And like you said, when you do it this way, it's just even keel the whole time.
Sure. Well, I've always tried to be careful about what I eat on the day of a gig, and especially right before I get on stage.
You're wise.
Because we played a gig in Prattville one night.
Come on.
And I'm not going to name this fellow's name. He's a good friend of mine. And to this day, I laugh about this story. But we played a bar that was on the end of a hotel. And I'm not going to mention the hotel chain. It's a very national chain.
You would recognize it.
You would recognize it. I'm sure there's probably songs about it. Anyway, we get done with set 1, and the bar was a terrible place. We called it the Smoke Shack because we'd get there at 7 a.m. or 7 p.m. before there was a single customer, and your eyes would literally burn from all the nicotine left over from the night before. This is back in before they outlawed all that stuff. So we get done with set 1. Guitar player runs off the stage, runs back to the bathroom, and the men's room has no door. Neither on the door of the bathroom or the stall.
Oh, perfect.
So nothing.
Always wanted to be famous.
So, and
Jeez.
we had stopped on the way down there. Burger King had just started selling the Angry Whopper. So he had gotten an Angry Whopper, and that's what it was. After first set, the Angry Whopper was really upset. So he goes running to the lobby of the hotel. And he runs in the hotel, and he told the lady behind the desk, he said, ma'am, and keep in mind it's like 11 o'clock at night now. Ma'am, I've got to use your bathroom, please, can I use your bathroom? And she goes, sir, these bathrooms are for customers and guests only. He goes, well, here's what's about to happen. Either I'm using your bathroom or I'm shitting in this plant over here, and you can decide if we're on the news tomorrow or not. She goes, it's over there. So ever since I watched that, I was like, okay, I'm going to be real careful about what I eat because I don't want to run into that.
I had a similar situation with a buddy that will also go unnamed. And it was kind of I won't say it was a big deal, but it was a bigger deal band, you know, and they would have like food for us before the gigs. And there was something that was, I don't remember what it was, but it was one of those minefield type deal. Like I didn't want any part of it because I was scared about the situation. And then at the end of the night, the drummer's like, and we all had, the uniform was white pants. And
oh, that's a nightmare from the get-go.
Yeah. And he's like, man, I've got bad gas from that so-and-so. And he stands up. Bro, it wasn't gas.
Oh,
no! Gas is liquid a gas?
No.
Okay. Then it wasn't gas.
Oh, in white pants, that's horrible.
Yeah.
That is horrible.
Yeah, you might as well have an iPhone flashlight on it.
I do have a drummer buddy who I've been sitting at home on a Saturday and gotten a call, hey man, can you come down here and do a set for me? Because
he had to handle it.
Yeah, they had to go handle some business.
We were at the booth in Tuscaloosa in the mid-90s, and you all know this guy, so I'm not going to. You probably know it just from me saying the booth in the mid-90s. Some of you will know who it was. But we had, our lead singer really wanted us to be like a jam band, right? So, and you can kind of control that by when you come back in with your vocals. And we were doing a whipping post.
Oh, Lord.
And I look over, and our guitarist is sitting there playing, and I see him make eye contact with the vocalist, and I could read his lips. He said, man, I've got shit. And he's just making him play instead of letting him shit, you know?
Oh,
and then as soon as we did the end of the song, like we were still razzing at the end, you know, that little vibe took off running all the way. Because see, this place, the booth had a piece of sheet metal bent like this that was slightly canted this way and a 1-inch PVC pipe across the back with low pressure water in it and holes drilled in it, so it just dripped water. That was the men's bathroom.
Oh.
I called it the trough because that's all it was. Like you're standing there next to a frat guy and another frat guy, and y'all all got your goober out. And that's just it.
This wouldn't be in Jacksonville, Alabama, would it?
No, it was in Tuscaloosa.
Oh, okay. Well,
the booth in Tuscaloosa, and he hauled ass to the end of the street in sandals, running at top speed to the BP down there that was on the corner, and blew it up. And really, the woman working it was a saint because she was locking it down when he got there, and she apparently saw the panic on his face and let him in.
This is my good act for the day.
Yeah. I hope he didn't make her life any worse, I'll say that.
Man.
I didn't say that person's name while I was telling the story. I thought I did okay.
So, non-related musical story, but while we're talking about bathroom humor, because what's more fun than that?
Dick and fart jokes are the best.
The best. I played for a church camp back in the late 90s. We would do camps in Florida and we'd do camps in Gatlinburg. And so I love Gatlinburg. It's one of my favorite, or used to.
Right.
Before, and it was a horrible thing, the fire that happened, but the way they have rebuilt it, all of the heart and soul in Gatlinburg has been lost, in my opinion.
And the crowds just are overwhelming.
Yeah, and it's just a commercialized theme park. It's not
Panama City in the mountains.
Exactly. I hate that. Not to rag on Gatlinburg. I'm sorry, Gatlinburg.
We still go.
Yes.
We still go.
Yeah. Love it. But anyway, on the way up there, Smoky Mountain Knife Works. You ever been there? Big place. Okay.
Man, that catalog wouldn't be worth a shit by the time the next one came.
Wear it out.
Oh, God.
I used to love it. My grandfather started us going in there every time we would go up. And then it became a tradition. If I go up there, I'd have to stop by. So this one particular trip, me and a friend of mine, and I will call his name, Brandon Landers, because he and I weren't the subject of the story. We were witnesses. But we stopped off and we're looking around in there, and we had just come from a week of camp and eating shitty camp food. We're on our way home. And so, obviously, both of us, just about the same time, decided we had to go to the bathroom. So we go to the men's bathroom in the Smoky Mountain Knife Works, and it's a 3-stall setup. You got 2 urinals and you got 3 toilet stalls. So he went in the first stall, and I went in the last stall. There was nobody in the middle. And it's just the two of us in the bathroom, so we're laughing back and forth. We're telling jokes through the stalls and, just enjoying shitting together, I guess. So we hear the door open and somebody comes in.
Yeah,
so
the conversation stops.
The conversation immediately stops.
Unspoken rule.
Yeah. So
it's like gravity. You don't even talk about it. You know it's there.
Third person comes in, goes into the middle stall in between us. And it's quiet. And all of a sudden, the loudest, rippingest farts come from that middle stall. And whoever it was in there was having a serious digestive moment. And it's all I can do to keep from...
Sure, you're about to blow your eardrums out.
Yes. And luckily, I had finished the paperwork and I'm about to get ready. I hear Landers this guy rips a loud one, and Landers explodes in the first stall, just dying laughing. I yank my pants up and get out of there as quick as I can. He comes out still crying, laughing. And from inside, he's opening the door, walking out laughing. I can still hear more fart noises coming from inside the bathroom.
Yes.
And I feel sorry for that. Whoever you were, dude, if you ever see this, just know we sympathize with you, but that was one of the funniest things ever.
Yes. I feel bad for you, but we appreciate the
my God,
the humor in the situation.
It's like being at a funeral, man, when you're not supposed to laugh. It's the hardest to not laugh.
Yeah, I can't stay in the room where the body is and stuff. I have to stay outside.
Yeah.
In that area where it's okay to laugh and stuff.
Mm-hmm. I deal with it in weird ways, man.
Well, and it's also a good place to catch up with people. I end up seeing the people I wish I could see at funerals.
I know. I hate that. I hate it. And especially, this is sadly, musicians' funerals.
Yes.
These are all guys that we love. And that's part of the reason why I want to do this podcast, is because we're losing a lot of those guys, especially guys that were in it when you and I came in, who brought us along and taught us things. A lot of those guys are gone.
Jim Bagley was a big deal.
Man, you know what? I was talking. Barry McNair stopped by the store today.
Really?
We got to talking about Jim Bagley and how much we missed him. Yeah, I learned a lot from
I
Jim.
would say out of the local musicians, Mike Turner, my dad, Jim Bagley, Mark Scott were probably my tightest influences as far as the older generation.
Well, for me, it started.
If I left somebody out, I'm so sorry. I probably didn't.
It started for me with Joe Compton.
Sure.
Because I met Joe when I was 18. I was a senior in high school, and I got picked to be the master of ceremonies for coronation that year.
Sure.
Everybody liked my radio
Do me a
voice.
favor, that line volume on the right,
Yeah.
turn it to 12 o'clock. Yeah, straight up.
All right.
Does that change anything?
I don't know. I haven't been looking at the indicator, to tell the truth.
Pull that back up, man.
All right.
I was just trying to make sure we weren't
I don't.
redlining the signal we're sending.
Sure.
Okay, yeah, we're good.
Yeah. And for everybody watching, we're still trying to figure all this stuff out. By the way, if there's anybody that wants to give us some advice, tips, or throw some money our way, please contact us via Facebook. Or we're actually about to launch this on YouTube as well. This will be on Spotify. I've built the shell of a YouTube channel. We just need to plug in some pictures and stuff. Hopefully we'll have that up and running so you'll be able to catch us on YouTube and on Spotify also. Please listen, give us a like, tell everybody about it. We want to grow this, like I said, to bring awareness to these guys that we've lost. Danny Moon, another one. Danny was really influential to me. Joe Compton is still with us, obviously, but I met Joe when I was in high school, and we literally hung out all night long at Etowah High School's gym, just goofing off a PA and hooking it up. This was back in the day when Joe had just started a company, him and David Allred. And they had this conglomeration of different stuff, like there were trainer cabinets and PV cabinets and old JBLs and stuff for fur on the side. And
getting it done.
Almost every, like if it was a coronation event, a high school prom, DJ and dances, they would literally set up every single speaker, piece of gear. They had this monster wall of mismatched sound. Yeah. So, and I actually got my first job with them. They gave me a job going around helping them. I would run the light shows and hook stuff up. I learned a little bit about PA. I got to play records and then eventually I got to start doing it on my own, and that led to working in radio. But if it hadn't been for Joe Compton and Jeff Freeman was the guy who got me my first drum kit and then taught me a lot about playing drums. Tony Clevenger taught me about guitar, and I was lucky enough to have all these older guys that I was able to just draw things from, and I know I drove them crazy. I was a little kid that followed everybody around and harassed them endlessly, but those guys were very, very generous with their time and their knowledge. And
no doubt.
To this day, I still appreciate all of them.
Mark Scott and Dee Bolden worked at Adams Music Company.
Yep.
And they were the two that I harassed as a child. I would ride my bike from South Gadsden to Broad Street. Williams Service Station on South 11th Street, just behind there is where I live.
That's a big hill to climb right there, too.
You put in the work. And, I would ride down there and probably sweat all over their guitars and stuff. And they were always so cool. Mm. And I remember I had a guitar. I got my first guitar that was mine. Somebody that lived a street over had an amp and a guitar and wanted to trade it for my skateboard. I had a Powell Peralta skateboard. And I literally made the deal out my bedroom window because I wasn't sure if my parents would be okay with this deal. That's
probably the best decision you ever made.
And then I ended up trading that guitar.
Because that skateboard wouldn't be making you any money today.
No. I've got some scabs, some scars from it. But I traded that guitar in, which there was, now that I look back on it, there was no reason for Mark Scott to trade me that guitar. To trade in that guitar. It was a Sensonics from Sears. he may have just turned around and thrown it in the dumpster. It was a horrible instrument.
Yeah.
And I got a blue BC Rich Platinum Series or NJ Series, the entry level BC Rich, And yeah, him and D Bolden always took care of me, man. D's gone now too.
Yes, I know. My first guitar, my grandfather, I told him I wanted a guitar. I actually got a drum set when I was 3, a little toy drum set, and I beat that thing to splinters by the time I was 5. But when I was about 12, 13, I wanted a guitar. I had a little crappy guitar back then, the Harmony guitars you buy from Sears. I had what now is a First Act, and crappy. I think the strings were that high off the fretboard. But
had to have vice grips to turn the tuners.
Oh my God, it was hard. But he told me, if you'll learn to play, he loved The Streets of Bakersfield by Dwight Yoakam and Buck Owens. You learn to play that song, and I will buy you a guitar. And so there was an old man named Harold Daugherty. I believe that was his last name. I wish I knew for sure. He lived next door to my other grandfather, and he was an old bluegrass picker from the 30s and 40s.
Nice.
Like they would travel all over and play. He was left-handed. He played guitar, he played fiddle, he played mandolin and banjo, and he flipped every one of them upside down and ordered everything backwards.
Wow.
He had taught himself how to do that. And so I learned to play guitar a little bit from him.
Sure.
And told him what I was trying to do, and at the end of the day, it's a country song with 3 chords.
Sure.
So he taught me the 3 chords in a key that I could sing them, and I fumbled through it for my grandfather, and then he took me down to Adams Music and bought my first guitar from D.
What'd you get?
It was a Fender Gemini, it's a black acoustic guitar, and it was a really good acoustic guitar. And it was probably an entry level, but to me, it was the best thing ever. And I moved to Birmingham when I was 19, and it got stolen, along with a really nice stereo system that I had bought from Joe Compton, as a matter of fact. Took years to pay him off, and bless his heart, he was very, very gracious, more gracious than he should have been, I'm sure. But both of them, we got robbed, and that was gone. So I lost that first guitar. Yeah, I broke my heart, especially because my grandfather bought it for me. That meant more to me than anything.
Sure.
But it was years down the road before I would pick up a guitar again and start playing again. Sure. I always wanted to be a drummer. When I was a kid, I saw Peter Criss, and that was it.
Sure.
All that stuff.
Well, you turned out to be pretty damn good at it. So.
Well, I do. I guess. Well, yeah, I really I lied my way into the first band that I was ever in. Actually, twice. I lied my way in twice, and then had to figure out how to do it. I always had way more drive than I had talent.
Wanting to goes a long way, man.
It really does.
There's plenty of examples in life of natural talent that had no drive paired with it, and it just didn't do anything. Well,
and something I learned is that for music especially, we're pattern-seeking mammals, and music's just patterns that repeat themselves.
Without a doubt.
Once you learn how to navigate those patterns, then you can play music. You might not be, even if you can't play at a level of an Eddie Van Halen or somebody like that, you can play songs and entertainers and enjoy playing music.
Yes.
Just learn a few chords, and once you start learning these patterns, you'll see them repeat over and over and over. I know you see it in guitar and bass motifs. I see it in drums, different fills that get used over and over and over again. And once you learn those patterns, then everything you don't learn one song and then 2 songs and 3 songs. You learn one song, and then all of a sudden it's 5 songs, and then all of a sudden it's 20 songs.
Sure.
It grows exponentially.
Once you recognize that it's patterns, it's like somebody walked in and turned on the light in this room.
Yeah.
And it's just like, okay, wow. It's all the same song. Not to try to sound all hippy-dippy about it.
Sure.
But it's until you start getting into like Spain by Chick Corea and jazz fusion, it's kind of all the same song.
But because we are pattern-seeking mammals, that's what comforts us. I think that's the reason why simple pop tunes
without
always do. That's why they're so appealing, is because it's an easy pattern to recognize. It gets stuck in your head.
It's actually familiar. They may not realize it.
Sure. And I'll be honest with you, I fought forever, especially being a musician. I went through phases where I was real snobby, man. I only listened to Steely Dan only. Now that I'm older and I've got past all that being cool shit, I realize I really like simple pop tunes.
I do too.
You know, I like the simplicity.
Ed Sheeran. I absolutely love Ed Sheeran. And his stuff is so simple that he does it in a looper, right? So, I mean, the verse and the chorus are the same chorus.
Yeah.
He just changes the melody over, and a lot of it. Now, that's not the case with all of it. Bieber, I freaking love Bieber, Shawn Mendes, all that stuff.
Okay, so here's a great topic of conversation. I actually had meant to bring this up, and you reminded me. Guilty pleasures. What are some of the things that you listen to that you think people would be surprised to know you like, or you might be slightly embarrassed to let people know you like?
All that stuff I just named.
Yeah, Bieber, I started judging you pretty harshly, bro. I'm not going to lie.
Let's see. I don't know. I think people are surprised when they find out that I listen to instrumental progressive metal quite a bit.
I'm surprised to know that.
From your facial expression,
I wouldn't have picked that either.
Yes.
Instrumental progressive. I thought you were going to jazz. I didn't know metal.
There's a guy.
Really?
Yeah, Anup Sastry, who's a Middle Eastern guy. He actually programs all of his instruments, but he's a drummer.
Okay.
And programs all this stuff. But it's very djenty. Like djent is kind of my thing. But I do not. When a vocalist kicks in, next, I just move on to the next one. Animals as Leaders, which is Tosin Abasi's group. He's a Nigerian guy. He's kind of applied what Victor Wooten did on the bass with the different thumb patterns and stuff.
Oh, nice.
He plays an 8-string guitar, and so it's very mechanical patterns that I'll send you a track to check out, and you'll be like, okay, I get that, because it's patterns. They're odd, but they are patterns. It's a new approach to the instrument that you're probably not familiar with, that kind of stuff. Intervals is another group like that. Just dork math rock.
You know,
What about you?
Well, I'm very different on that, because even though I'm impressed by people who can play like
Yes.
Dream Theater, for example, phenomenal band.
Yes.
I can't
Some of the greatest
imagine.
musicians on earth.
Can't imagine that level of musicianship. However, to be honest with you, their original tunes bore me to tears.
Sure.
Like Steve Vai is an unbelievably good guitar player. Within 20 seconds, I've heard every note on his neck. And if I was a guitar player, I'm sure I could enjoy that, because I nerd out on certain drummers like that. I may not like the music they play, but I really dig the way they play specifically. But yeah, anything that's like musical calculus to me, I can't relate.
I like it, but I understand why people don't. Like, it makes sense to me. Look why you don't dig it.
And I respect it. And I've learned, as I've gotten older, I don't shit on anything anymore. And whatever
Nickelback.
you like.
I love Nickelback. Go ahead.
I don't know what the hell's wrong with. I don't know why everybody hates Nickelback. What has Nickelback ever done to anybody?
I used to be in denial about it, and I would compensate for my denial by shitting on them, but I love them. I've loved them the whole time. It's out.
Yeah, it's a cliche target, but yeah, I never did understand that either. I don't know why people shit on Nickelback.
I'll tell you the person I saw that I feel like instigated it.
Okay.
I used to be on Twitter, and I followed the Iron Sheik.
Okay, very worthy.
And Zach
Galifianakis. Yeah.
Yes. And he had a tweet one Monday morning. I was at Guess and Music, and I opened up my phone, and the first thing on the top of my screen said, if Monday was a band, it would be Nickelback. And after that moment is when I noticed all of creation shitting on Nickelback. I don't know if that's what started it, but I will say that was at the beginning.
I never see it. To me, it seemed like Creed was a much more worthy band to shit on. Yeah, because everything about them was just pretentious, and I just never did like Creed at all.
I saw an excerpt from an interview where he was riding. Scott Stapp was riding down the road with his kids in the car, and Arms Wide Open came on the radio, and the kid was mocking. And
Right there with him in the car.
And he's like, that song is about you.
Oh, that's gotta hurt.
Yeah.
You know, when that song came out, I really dug that song for about a month.
Right.
And then it got played every day, 6 times a day.
This is when you were in radio, right?
Yes, until it was just, please play something else,
Sure.
anything else. And I tried to listen to the rest of the album, but everything sounded the same because it was all in drop D.
Sure.
And it was all...
Blick.
Yeah. Now, weirdly enough, when Alter Bridge came out, I liked a lot of the stuff that they did. I enjoyed that band.
How were they related?
I think Alter Bridge is Creed without Scott Stapp, if I'm not mistaken. Is that not correct?
Is that Mark Tremonti?
It's at least, I don't know.
I think the
anybody.
guitar player was Mark Tremonti.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
And I think it was the same drummer at least.
He's got my favorite Paul Reed Smith signature model guitar.
Cool.
Like all of his, they're all kind of the same, but they put different stuff in different places, and his is laid out the way
Sure.
my preference.
Well, and again, I don't want to shit on Creed. Creed was not a bad band.
I can't
anybody-
shit on them because I've had a Tremonti and I'm looking at one again.
Sure. Well, look, anybody who made it to a label and put a record on the radio, if you played in front of crowds, as far as I'm concerned, you're worthy of respect. I don't care who you are. Milli Vanilli is worthy of respect.
They did it.
Yes, and you know what's terrible is now everybody does what they got destroyed for doing.
That's exactly right.
Everybody on stage is doing. ZZ Top is playing the backing tracks.
Wow.
And that was the destruction of Milli Vanilli.
Yeah. I saw an interview with Bruno Mars before he did the halftime show at the Super Bowl, and this was one of my favorite interviews I've ever seen because they asked him, was he going to be, they said, Bruno, are you going to be lip syncing for the halftime show? And his response was, no, I don't have to. And I was just like, and if you've seen that halftime show, you know it was pure smoke.
Sure.
Like, he slayed his band. Everybody.
That dude is unbelievable. I mean, he's the new James Brown, and no offense to James Brown fans, I don't want to get a ton of mail going, no, it's not the same, but if anybody's carrying on the tradition of hard work and showmanship, that's the comparison I'm
Supreme entertainer.
Yes.
I equate him to the modern day Michael Jackson.
And to me, Michael Jackson was carrying on that same, Michael Jackson and Prince. Speaking of which, did you ever see the video of James Brown and Michael Jackson and Prince all on stage at the same time together?
No, did the Universe Fabric say?
It's on YouTube. You should look it up. It's cool. James Brown is giving a concert, and he calls Michael Jackson up. And now this was like right as Thriller and Purple Rain both had this. They were at the height of their popularity, and there was a massive rivalry apparently going on between Michael Jackson and Prince. Like, they did not like each other. Huh. James Brown pulls Michael Jackson up on stage. Michael does a little sings and spins and does a few things. And then James Brown says, we got another friend out in the audience, and brings Prince up. And Prince picks up a guitar, tries to get it to play, and for whatever reason it's not working. I don't know. Anyway, it did not go well for Prince. And he finally just exits the stage, and he jumps and grabs, if I remember correctly, there's like a fake light post, and he jumps up and grabs it and goes to swing, but it's not anchored to anything, so the whole post just
down. So it went from bad to worse.
It went from bad to worse. But, that was
Prince lost the rap battle that night.
I don't know. I may be remembering some of it wrong. It's worth going back and looking at.
Oh, I'll check it out.
Yeah, I'll see if I can't find it and send it to you. But going back to Guilty Pleasures. So, Charlie Freeman, who is my best friend in the world, he and I has been as close as brothers for years. We're sitting at the bar at Easy Street one night. We had just put Avenue South back together. They had been a band. We revamped and we're starting to launch. And so we've been picking out songs. And so we're sitting there, we're eating dinner, we're waiting to go on and play for Shane Gibbons or Jason Cameron, somebody, I don't remember who we were playing with that night. We'd become everybody's rhythm section. And so we're staring at the TV screens and eating, not really saying a whole lot. And Charlie goes, I see Jeannie put Dancing Queen on the list to learn. I said, yeah. Is that going to be a problem? He said, no. We both sat there for a minute. Charlie goes, I like that song. So I like that song too. We sat there for a few more minutes. Charlie goes, you know, I really like ABBA. I said, yeah, I do too. And he goes, damn it, Morgan. Okay. Wait a minute. This will make more sense. Years ago, Charlie called me and said, hey man, let's go out. It's a Friday night. Nothing going on. And I said, well, I don't have any money, Charlie. He said, well, I'll pay for everything. Come on, well, let's go out. So I go over to his house. We go out. We went by and heard a band sound check at the Wagon Wheel, which is no longer in existence. And then Charlie goes, hey man, let's go get some dinner. I said, all right, where do you want to go? He goes, let's go to Cracker Barrel. So, okay, so we drive over to Cracker Barrel. And it's a Friday night, so Cracker Barrel's packed. And as you do, we put our name on the list, and then we're wandering around the gift shop looking at stuff. Well, I like things that smell good. That's one of the weird things about me. I like things to smell good. I don't like things to smell bad, especially me. I'm very, very peculiar about I don't want to stink.
We all appreciate that.
Sure. I wish more people had that policy.
Reciprocate.
Yes. So I wound up over by the Senate candles, and I'm just smelling different candles. Just Charlie wanders up, and I had a candle in my hand. He goes, "What are you doing? This smells good. Try this out." And I hand him the candle, and he sniffs of it. And so then he picks up a candle and sniffs it. Hold the hand. Try this one. And so we're passing candles back and forth. And keep in mind, Charlie's 6'1", 2", bald-headed. Back then, I had hair even longer than I got now. And so out of the corner of my eye, I'm noticing there's all these like church groups in the gift shop. And they're all kind of side-eyeing me and Charlie. And I told Charlie, I said, hey man, I think everybody in here thinks we're a couple. And Charlie goes, what? And he turns around, and about that time, Morgan, party of two. That's so weird. So I went home and told my wife about that, and she has ragged us ever since about you and Charlie going sniffing candles, So we're sitting there at the bar talking about ABBA. The next day, Charlie and I were riding to Anniston, and Charlie goes, we had another one of them damn candle sniffing moments, don't you? And I went, what? He goes, two old-ass dudes sitting at the bar talking about how much they love ABBA.
Candle sniffing moments.
But that's one of my guilty pleasures, man. I love ABBA. And here's why. My grandmother, who I love dearly, loved ABBA. And when I was a kid, she turned me on to them.
Sure.
And so every time I listen to them, I think about her. And it's those good memories. So I have a soft spot for ABBA.
It's wild how a album or a song it's almost like a time machine.
Man, some songs just immediately right back to a certain time.
But you can't overdo it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can't listen to it every day.
No, you're right, yeah.
Because it'll lose its
effect.
It'll
lose its effect. Like, I can still, every time I hear You Give Love a Bad Name, I go right back to 1987. I was in middle school in Opelika, Alabama, the worst year of my teenage years.
Right.
I was in a town where I didn't know anybody. I was getting beat up all the time because I was the new kid and I was weird and I didn't get into sports like everybody else did.
Sure.
If you grew up in the Auburn area, you were into football or basketball.
Or a target.
Yeah, exactly. And I was the target. But the Beastie Boys, License to Ill, and Run DMC, Raising Hell, and Bon Jovi, Slippery When Wet were the three big records that were playing all the time. And every time, and I don't know why. We had a bus driver that would let felonies happen on the bus. Like, she literally stared at the road, and whatever was going on in the back of the bus, as long as there wasn't blood involved, she did not give a shit. So the older kids would bring jukeboxes. And I mean, back in the days, remember the big boom boxes? They had one of those cranking all the time in the back of that bus. And it was constantly those 3 records. I heard all those songs growing up. To this day, I'm
Pretty good albums, though.
To this day, I'm a big Beastie Boys fan.
Sure.
I love the Beastie Boys.
Yeah, there's worse albums you could have been stuck on back there.
Oh yeah, for sure. That was right around the time that hair metal was just starting to really be a thing. I can remember that was the same year that I made like 3 friends that whole year. One of them came up to me after school going, "Hey man, look at this record. These are the hottest chicks I've ever seen." And it was Poison, Look What the Cat Dragged In. He's like, well, one of them's kind of ugly, but the other 3 are hot.
I'm guessing it was the bassist that was kind of ugly.
I think it was C.C. DeVille. He always had that honker he had the cocaine nose.
Yes. You know what, though? If you've looked at that album cover, you know that was not the first person. Like, that was not a unique experience.
No. They perfected that look. And, you know, if I had to guess, just based on interviews I've seen and things I've heard, and I actually know a guy who played in that scene at the time, and they probably, all that was done by their stripper girlfriends.
Sure.
That they were dating. Because that's how you had to survive back then. That was the only way you got fed. You found a stripper girlfriend, she gave you money and made sure you had a place to eat and
Wow.
sleep, you know. I can't imagine going through that, but had they not, we would have lost out on some great music.
Sure.
I loved the hair metal years. I enjoyed it. I mean, I liked all that stuff.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. That was around the time period that when I started getting into guitar was when that stuff was hot. And Appetite for Destruction, I think, was the real catalyst for that swap over from the skateboard to the guitar. I'd have to put that all on Appetite for Destruction.
I think, well, I remember when 1984 came out, Van Halen to me was never a metal band.
No.
They were a prototype of that.
Sure.
But
I've always just put them in the rock and roll. Just good old-fashioned rock and roll.
Bands like Van Halen,
they could have played metal.
Night Ranger, oh, of course, you know, and a lot of the stuff they played did sound like metal. But
to the untrained ear.
Do what now?
To the untrained ear.
To the untrained, yeah, exactly. But bands like Van Halen and Night Ranger and all, they were a separate thing to me. To me, hair metal started with Quiet Riot and Rat.
Mm-hmm.
And my aunt gave me a copy of
They were
Metal Health.
just a little more pissed off.
Yeah. And less slick. Like Van Halen was, even from their first album, they were pretty slick and polished. They had some rawness to them, but you could tell there was star quality there.
Yeah.
Like Rat and Quiet Riot were just, they looked like they were either going to play music or there was going to be a bar fight. One of the two.
Like 2/3 at least of the band had to look like they had BO. You know what I mean? You just look at it and go, yeah, somebody in that bunch stinks.
Morgan Baxter told me one time that somebody, I think it was David Allen Coe, he goes, he looks like he smells bad. Just looking at a picture. That's what their pictures look like.
I use that quite a bit. It'd either be a person I see or a place.
Man, I just...
watching that Geo or something, they show something, you're like, I bet it stinks there.
Yeah. Like Hoarders, you ever watch that? And
Without a doubt.
I cannot imagine what some of those places smell like.
God, man.
Just, ugh.
That's a whole rabbit trail right there. Somebody needs to make it like a best of. You know what I mean? Just where they just show us the really gross shit. Don't build me up to it. Just, I want to have no serotonin left.
I don't know, man. Sometimes I get fascinated by that stuff, and then about 2 or 3 minutes in, I'm like, I need to watch something more wholesome. This is dragging me down.
Yeah.
Hoarders.
Ted Lasso.
Yeah. Well, that and the intervention shows.
Sure.
You know,
yeah, it's not lighthearted and it don't pick you up.
well, I will watch the 5 minutes when they give the backstory on the train wreck that their life is.
Sure.
And the minute they start reading letters to them, then I switch off.
Right.
I only want the train wreck. I hate that. I hope they solve their problems and everything ends up rosy for them. But I'm entertained by the train wreck.
Sure.
Let's
Well,
face
yeah.
it. We went to NASCAR to see cars wreck. We didn't.
Well, yeah, totally. I tell people all the time just about the nature of the dynamic in the country now and how everybody's so polarized. And I'm like, the human nature is if we had a clip of me and you for 2 minutes hugging and telling each other how great we thought the other one was,
Yeah.
nobody would watch it. But if we sit here and fist fought for 2 minutes, it would go viral.
Absolutely. And I absolutely hate that. I don't understand why everything is so polarized. Well, I do understand, but I don't understand. And I wish people could stop and take a breath
Yes.
and realize that these differences that you think we have, that's stuff being stirred up to
Sure.
keep us this way.
Yes.
Because if everybody who was in the middle class and the lower class got together and agreed all at once,
Game over.
game over.
Yeah.
You know.
It's kind of like we're all cake. We're all the same kind of
You
cake.
kind of hear how this goes.
Well, just the icing is different. You know what I mean? We're all the same. Like, we agree on way more shit as individuals out here interacting with other people than the media has allowed us to believe because they've been focusing on the icing. The
Yeah.
icing.
At the end of the day, we all want to be safe. We all want a safe place to live that's
Sure.
comfortable. We all want to be able to provide for our families.
Yes.
And we all want to be free to be left alone and not be meddled with as long as we're not harming somebody else. I don't know
That's a great
anyone
plan.
else on the planet that doesn't want that.
Sure.
So it doesn't matter if you're left, if you're right, if you're straight, or you're gay, or transgender. It doesn't matter what you are. Everybody needs that.
Sure.
And if we would focus on that for a little while, I think things would get back under control.
Sure.
You know.
I don't think there's money in that, though.
No, of course there's
It's
not.
why it's not getting focused on.
But you know, again, that's another thing that I've come to realize is that I live in a 2,000 square foot home.
Sure. It's like,
I drive a Honda Odyssey van. Nothing special about any of that. I need a bathroom remodeled. But I love the house that I live in. I don't want a mansion. I don't need a mansion.
Right.
I don't need that kind of money. I don't need a new car. I don't need new toys. I got all the toys I'll ever want. I don't need a new drum kit. I got 4 drum kits.
Sure.
None of them are new, but they're all perfectly fine, and I'm happy with every one of them. So I don't want for much. All I want is just my needs met and enough to take care of my family so that we're comfortable. Not rich, not wealthy, just comfortable.
right.
And I don't think that's too much to ask from anybody. So the greed, I have a hard time with just this greed factor,
It's
just more and
fascinating.
more and more. You know,
It's fascinating to me, man.
it blows my mind, you know. I try to, by the way, shout out again, we have no sponsors, so at the moment,
Hint.
yes, we definitely want some sponsors. We'll take any comers, anybody musical, anything, you know.
Loaf bread, whatever.
Yes, if you're cutting out a fleshlight, call us. We'll talk. But
No demos.
shout out to, we both work for Gaston Music. For those of you that don't know, it's a great company, fantastic company. Love
The best
where we
place
work.
ever.
Yes. And one of the things, the reason why I brought them up, one of the things that I like about our company is that we don't just try to gouge people for as much money as we can get out of
No.
it. And we don't need to. And I really like being, because a lot of the other places I've worked, especially places where it was sales, you were just pushed more, sell more, get more out of them, do that, you know. And I like not having to put people under that pressure. I don't ever want to sell people stuff that they don't need.
Sure.
You know, I can't take advantage of people and feel good about myself.
Sure.
I can't live like that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But we've bred a country that operates in exactly that way, and we've made it corporate, so it's not individual.
No,
there's no one to blame. Well, there's no person to blame.
Sure.
It's a business, and a business has no soul. It has no empathy. It doesn't care,
Right.
about who it hurts. And that's what I think is a big problem. When businesses were owned by
Individuals.
and this is so far off the map, but when they're owned by individuals are responsible for the community. They're responsible for the people they work for.
Sure.
Our bosses take care of us.
Yes.
And
They care about us. They care about the community.
Yes,
They
absolutely.
care about the clients we serve.
So shop gas to music. It's well worth your money.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. But yeah, I wish we could get off that. And that goes to bring this all back around to music. That goes to when you're playing in clubs too. A lot of the club owners I've seen just get greedy. They would rather pay $200 for a band that sounds terrible than pay a little bit more money for a band that'll actually bring people in the door.
Sure.
And I guess
And keep people.
to a certain degree, their argument is these people are not coming to hear a band play anyway. You're just a human jukebox, and that's kind of what we are in a lot of places.
Yeah,
But-
I call it the dancing bear. But if that was the case, you could just play the jukebox.
Yeah, you could.
You know what I mean?
Well,
Either do the jukebox or do a quality band.
I have said this before, though. I'm optimistic and hopeful about the future because I'm starting to see more venues book more bands again. I'm starting to see people actually want to leave the house and go. I think, prior to the pandemic, nobody wanted to go out because why would I go out and sit at home? I've got the internet. Everything in the world's right in front of me.
Sure.
If I want to watch any band, I can do it from my living room in my underwear eating Cheetos.
Right.
But when we were forced to stay at home for a considerable amount of time, now I think everybody's all right. I'm done with that shit. I want to get out and go do
It
things.
drove me crazy, man. I thought I was going to lose my shit. I couldn't hug anybody. Yeah. I was not okay during lockdown. My wife is a total introvert. She's like, babe, I've been training for this my whole life. I'm great right now.
Me and my wife, our family is kind of introverted too, so it didn't really bother us much. And again, we like everybody else, we had our internet, we had our toys.
Sure.
Now, it got a little bit tedious after a bit, but luckily I live on a lot of property. So we could get out and go walk in the woods. We could, we had activities that
And
we
we
could do
rode
to
mountain
keep us
bikes a
moving.
lot.
Well, and also too, we stayed out of work for a month, and then we started selling stuff out the front door. We'd take it to the curb,
Curbside.
and our business lit on fire. We were selling so much stuff, it was ridiculous. So
Well,
I
everybody,
didn't spend a lot of time in the pandemic not working.
Sure.
We went back to work pretty quickly.
a lot of people sitting at home decided to learn to play an instrument. Mountain bikes and musical instruments got wiped out during that time period.
Well, here's the thing that gives me a lot of hope for the future is that once the pandemic was over, or at least they let everybody back out in the world again, that didn't cool down. We're still selling guitars at the
Good.
same rate that we were selling during the pandemic.
I feel like that's going to come around to pop music too in the near future.
I believe so. I'm hoping that's going to translate in 6-8 years to a whole new crop of songwriters with new ideas.
Well, not too long ago, Extreme released a new album, Nuno Betancourt. And that solo for that first song that they did, it was trending at #1 on YouTube
Wow.
for a few days.
Nice.
Yes. A guitar solo was
Well,
trending at #1 on YouTube.
that's awesome.
Right?
Well-
I was like, oh, it could happen again.
I've been really excited about. I've fallen in love with the Winery Dogs. It's been a long time since I've really gotten into a rock band,
Right?
and I'm super impressed. So I've really been enjoying that, and because I always come into things way too late. Like I discovered Motown 30 years after it wasn't a thing anymore. But lately, going back to Guilty Pleasures, this is going to sound funny for a 49-year-old Southern man to say, I've become a huge Paramore fan.
Sure.
I hate that I don't know I haven't been into the band long enough to really learn the names of the members. I'm one of those that if I really like a band, I want to know the names of everybody that's in the band.
If they had trading cards, you would have them.
You're absolutely right. And that's actually not a bad idea. I kind of wish we had trading cards.
Brian Bankston made trading cards for a lot of the local musicians in
Oh, man, that would be great.
I want to say there was about 2006. It was during the Blackstone Band era when that was. But I've actually got a copy of all the cards in one of the plastic, you know what I mean? It goes up to the binder.
I've got to see that.
Yeah.
You'll have to bring that. Let me see. No, that
my card. I had just left work at Sears, so I've got on khakis, a blue button-up shirt, and a tie with my red Warwick bass on, and I'm holding it up in a rock and roll pose, and I've got a camel light between these two fingers, and I'm going with a long blonde ponytail.
The first band I was ever in, again, one of the bands that I lied my way into, was a band called Dirty Cat. We were trying to get on that hair metal front. This is like 93, maybe. No. Yeah, 92, 93, somewhere in there. I'd just gotten out of high school. I was 19 years old. And so the band was called Dirty Cat. And we all had a mutual friend named Dennis Bullock, who is a fantastic artist. Dennis can draw anything. He could draw. When I was a kid, you'd go up to his house. His bedroom, when you walked in the door, there was a life-size Spider-Man that he had painted on the wall that looked like the comic book. Wolverine standing against the door with a cigarette in his mouth. I mean, life-size. Dennis had hand-painted all that stuff, and it was amazing, even as a teenager. So Dennis, being a fan of the band, drew all of us as cats. So he had all of our mannerisms and everything, but made us all into cats. And I had a poster of me that he had drawn as a cat that I always thought was really cool. And then I lost it in a breakup. Like so many other things. Along with the bass that I played in that band.
I lost a Silver Surfer number 4 from 1960 something in a breakup one time.
Oh.
Yeah.
Man, I've lost a lot of things in breakups, man. I don't know. There's been a couple of them that have been pretty bad. That one was a pretty bad one, which I'll be honest with you, I was dating a girl I had no at all. And
educational experience.
Yeah. Over. And weirdly enough, it was right around the same time I was in that band too. The things you learn when you're a kid, man.
Or an adult.
Yeah, you're not joking.
If you ever stop learning, you've shit the bed. Yeah. There's always something else to learn.
Oh,
you just tricked yourself into thinking you know it all.
Right.
Which means you really don't know anything.
Yeah, no joke. So, what you got coming up, man? You got anything going on for the next couple of weeks? Anywhere you're playing? Or?
Yeah, well, I'm doing country club this Saturday. Then I'm leading worship at my church in Oxford on Sunday, and then again the following Sunday, and then I have nothing until the fall, maybe.
Wow.
Because the rental season with work is upon us, and it's not uncommon for me to work 80 hours in a week during that time.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
I may not even touch an instrument for 3 weeks on end.
Yeah. Luckily, I don't see that side of the business as much as you do, because you work in a different part of the store. I get all the traffic on the floor.
Sure.
My stuff stays pretty solid, but now there'll be a lot more foot traffic in the store due to rental season,
sure.
So I'm expecting that. Which, to that point, we may be a little bit sporadic on posting. Might be a week or two in between posts. Please stay with us. We're going to try to remain as consistent as possible. And there may be some shows where player's here and I'm not. He may have a special guest. I may be here with some shows and player won't be here. But we'll try to keep something going all the time. So keep with us, as we try to build this and grow. Hopefully we can make this into something. We're planning on having some great guests coming in. And we've got local guests, guys that we know that we got stories to tell about things they've done, and also some pretty big heavy hitters. I don't want to say any names out loud because, we haven't solidified anything.
Just because you don't know the person, you obviously might know us by now. You know a little bit about us if you've watched the 2 podcasts, but
sure.
Them not being a rock star does not mean that they do not have entertaining stories.
Exactly, and that's
it might
why
be the opposite.
that was the whole point of doing this podcast in the first place, is the fact that there are podcasts out there for people who have been famous and been out there and
Sure.
been on world tours, but we have a different experience because we've played the little small clubs. We've mingled with the crowds that we've actually
We have
played
no
for.
layer of security.
Yes, no. We've been in the thick of it all. And I've always said, I'm not the show. The show's out there in the floor. I'm actually a spectator to the show.
Yes.
I provide the soundtrack for the show.
That's it, buddy. That's
So those are the kind of stories that we want to focus on. And of course, occasionally we'll talk to some people who have been a little higher up the chain than we have.
Sure.
But yeah, we want to focus on the little guys, man, because that's what we are. So if you're one of those little guys, man, you got a story to tell, get in touch with us. Send us a message. Let us know, you got something to say. Shoot us an email. We'll try to have all that information up shortly on either one of the platforms that we're going to be posting on.
Bust on the outro.
Well, yeah. Well, as we said again, we're renaming. So, Juke Joint Heroes.